Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Moods, Minds, and Manifestations podcast, featuring real people, real experiences, and real talk. And I'm your host, Moca. So let's get into it. My guest today is Mia Oddo, and I've known Mia for several years, and I've always found her to be such a delightful and motivated person. And her story is quite interesting. So, Mia, welcome. It's nice to have you.
Thank you for having me.
So, I am going to just dive right into it. So, you were adopted.
Yes.
And tell us a little bit more about your adoption story.
So I am a Vietnam War baby, and I was part of Operation Babylift, which was a historical time at the end of the war. There was all these babies that were being born, and they were orphaned. And so in a race against time, President Ford actually created this Operation Babylift to save these babies that were products of the war to come out and be adopted by American families. So they chose 300 babies, and I was one of those children that was selected to be part of this Operation Babylift. And so my parents always wanted to adopt a child from Vietnam, and they had waited 2 years to get that notification that I was ready to come to the States. And so at that time, my parents were so excited to finally get to see me, and I was 4 months old at that time. And when they went to the airport, they found out that the plane that I was supposed to be on crashed.
Oh, wow.
As soon as it took off, it crashed into a rice paddy. And sadly, majority of those caretakers and babies died.
So how did it happen that you were not on that plane then? What happened?
So my parents were very distraught, and the reporters were, making them feel worse by saying, how do you feel after 2 years of waiting to see your baby, never to see your baby again, and the only thing you'll have to remember her by is that picture you're holding in your hand. And so my dad said, no, I want to verify what babies' bodies actually were found and what babies actually made the plane. So he called all over Washington and Vietnam, and he finally spoke to a Vietnamese official who said, Mr. Oddo, it was a miracle. For some reason, your baby was missing one signature.
Wow.
And that signature saved her life.
Wow.
And because of that, we had to bump her off that plane moments before it took off.
Oh my goodness.
And we had to wait for her paperwork to be complete. And as a result, she took the second plane, and she was one of the only survivors.
Wow, that is incredible.
Yeah.
Wow. So the waiting period in Vietnam, you were in an orphanage, or was it a special area that these special babies were being kept prior to being transported to the U.S.? Do you know that information?
I don't really know that information.
Okay.
I just know that I don't know if I was in the hospital and then I was adopted out of the hospital, or if I was in an orphanage and then they put me there. I don't really know much details about it.
Okay. And then do you know how your parents came to pick you? I'm always fascinated to see how that connection is made.
Well, there is a long waiting list. Like when you want a baby, when you want to adopt a baby, you go on a waiting list. So then as the babies are born, then they basically assign them to the parents based on the list.
Okay.
So that's why it took 2 years. So they had to wait 2 years, and then finally, it was destiny.
Yes.
That my name was, placed with them. And then they said, yep, your baby girl is ready.
Okay.
There's a lot of red tape that goes involved, though, when you adopt overseas.
Okay. Did they pick you up?
They picked me up.
Okay.
I flew they picked me up in Miami.
And did they name you, or were you named before you arrived in the States?
My birth name is Ty My Q, and because I come from an Italian family, and I was the baby girl, so Mia actually means mine.
Mine, right.
In Italian. So
right.
That's how I got my name, but they wanted me to keep part of my,
Heritage.
birth name. So they actually, Ty My Q, over in Asia, they pronounce last name first. So here in America, it would be Q My Ty, as my actual way that pronounce it here. But so they wanted me to keep my last name, which is Ty, and they put that in my middle name. So now my name is Mia Ty Oddo.
Oh, wonderful. That's wonderful. Mm-hmm. So where did you grow up?
I grew up in Boca Raton, Florida.
Okay. Boca, baby. Okay.
Yeah.
And you went to kindergarten, middle school, high school in Boca?
I did, yes. I went to, it was called Boca Academy.
Okay. And what was life like for you as a child in in this foreign country with a Caucasian family, as an Asian child? What was life like for you within the family itself?
Well, my parents were always very open and honest, first and foremost, about me being adopted. And I didn't really know what it meant to be adopted, because when you're young, you don't see color, you don't see race. Right. I didn't see my parents looking different like me. And it was actually through kids' eyes that I then understood, oh, wait a second, I am different.
Okay.
So I remember clearly, I was 6 years old. I was shopping for new shoes for school. I was in first grade. And my parents had told me before that I was adopted, but I didn't really get it.
Right.
Right. And it wasn't until then, and it was a pivotal moment, really, because this young little boy came up to me, and he looked at me, and he looked at my mom, and he said to me, "Where's your real mom?"
Wow.
And I looked at him, and I was like, "What? Mom, what is he talking about?" And he goes, "No, Mia, that's not your real mom." He's like, "Where's your real mom?" And so then my mom had that conversation again with me and explained that I was chosen and that it was fate and destiny, and that even though I didn't grow under her heart, it didn't mean that I didn't grow in it.
Right.
From the moment that she wanted to have me as her child. And so at that point, I then looked in the mirror and I saw the differences. And I said, oh, wait, my mom is blonde hair, blue eyes. I am dark skin, dark eyes, dark hair. I don't look like my parents. And it was at that point then that I knew that they were not my birth parents. So that was difficult, was, the kids, having to, explain to them. And I was the only Asian from first grade to sixth grade.
Wow.
I was the only Asian in the school, so I was treated differently because of my darker skin, because of my slanted eyes. And kids would sometimes ridicule me when I'm on the bus if I was sitting next to a white boy, and they would make racist comments.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
So it was, they'd be like, oh, you're going to have mixed babies, and, just weird comments and things,
What was school like, lower school and middle school and then high school? What was the experience like for you? Would you say it was positive or just in general? How was that for you?
So from first grade to sixth grade, because I was in a private school and because I was picked on a lot, my parents said, we need to get her out of private school and get her into public school so that she can see that there are people that look like her, there are people that have other nationalities. And so when I went into middle school, I really thrived, middle school and high school, because then I felt like there was a bigger world out there,
Okay.
And I got very involved in athletics. I was a tennis player. I sang. I was very active in the student council. So that to me was, a very special time because, I was really kind of getting more comfortable in my own skin and making friends and staying active.
That's good to hear because, kids can be really cruel. So it's yes. I'm glad that you had a, positive experience.
I will say though, being Asian and adopted, I was too American for the Asian kids. So I was never really accepted by other Asians because I didn't have the culture or understanding or language, and I was Americanized. So that was difficult in that I wanted to find people that looked like me,
right.
But I never really had that connection because I was American, so that was the challenge.
That just ties in well because I was about to ask you, did your adoptive family, or your family, let's not say adoptive because they are your family. Did they teach you anything about your roots and your heritage as much as they could?
They would have like other adoptive play groups where I could meet other kids that were Asian and adopted too. But my family, I was raised Italian.
Okay.
So most of the traditions and food was based on Italian traditions.
Right.
So I didn't really have that cultural influence. And I still to this day have not been back to Vietnam.
Oh, wow.
Since the day that I was born. Mm-hmm. And it was a dream of mine to go last year, but then with COVID, I couldn't go.
Okay.
So it's still something that is a deep desire for me to go back and see my roots.
Do you know if you have any living family members back in Vietnam or anywhere in the world for that matter?
On the birth certificate, which I'm sure was just created, it said nationality Vietnamese, parents unknown.
Okay.
So I don't have any way of tracing it, although I am going to be doing the 21andMe and Ancestry.com.
Yes. We'll do a follow-up if you get any hits on that. So would you say as an adult now, having been adopted, that you have or are experiencing any struggles coming from that background?
I think that the struggles that a lot of adopted kids face, even if you come from a very good family, which I did and I was very blessed, is abandonment issues.
Okay.
And wanting to feel loved and needed, like something from the womb, you know what I mean?
Right.
Being that like traumatic event happened. And I never really understood that until I started to really look inward and do a lot of personal development for myself in terms of like why I needed to feel a certain way, you know, in relationships and things like that. Like It's a very strong desire for me. And so I think that that's a big part of it is when you're adopted is feeling that wholeness, neediness, a fear of abandonment.
So do you feel that being adopted has shaped your life choices in any significant way?
Well, and I think, and this is something across the board with all kids, but especially when you look different from your parents, the need to fit in. I always wanted to be liked. I always wanted to be accepted. I always wanted to fit in. And yes, that's carried all through my life because of that.
Okay.
It still is something that I'm working on for myself.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah, maybe the struggle never really ends, but with time, maybe you learn different coping mechanisms, coping methods. And what would you say life is like as an Asian female today in 2023?
I think for me, maturity and wisdom, like when I was younger, I wanted to fit in and I wanted to look like other people. As I grew older, I learned to accept my beauty and my exoticism and, accepting who I was and what I look like and understanding that, I am beautiful. But when I was younger, I didn't think I was. I just wanted to fit in. I wanted to look like everyone else. And I thought blonde hair and blue eyes was the ideal type of woman that men wanted. Right. So all through my middle school, high school, even college years, I didn't really feel confident in my own skin. Okay. But as I grew older, that's really where I started to just get more confident with who I am and my actual exotic traits and things like that.
That's great. Wonderful. What would you say life is like as an Asian female in the workforce? I know you're self-employed and have to interact with other individuals. What's life like? Do you feel that there's any challenges because you're an Asian female and self-employed? Or is it just the usual female struggles that we go through?
I think that actually being Asian, a lot of people already have certain stereotypes with people that are Asian, whether they're smarter or whether they're, I don't know, better at math, like certain things. But I think for me, because I'm self-employed, right? So I don't have maybe if there was any prejudice or anything like that. But I do think that just being a female, being Asian, I did medical sales. So I think that, sometimes it works in my favor. Right. But I think it really all comes down to, my work ethic and just how I can connect with people. And
I think you have such a wonderful personality that you can break down any barriers. So,
it's so sweet.
even if somebody comes in with, some preconceived notion, I think you can disarm them with just your personality. So, and if you don't mind me asking, what's dating life like? Do guys or whoever, do they also have this preconceived notion because you're an Asian woman? Do they make any stupid comments, or they are more accepting, or what's it been like for you?
Well, I will say, because I do own a holistic wellness spa, and I do facials and massage. So I think, being Asian, some men will assume that I do other things.
Oh boy.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because there are places like that. But I don't have an Asian parlor. And so that's maybe the only, sometimes from ignorant people,
right,
will say, oh, is it that? No, it's not that type of spa. You need to go somewhere else. And then I just don't even talk to the person.
Yeah.
But, that's just, unfortunately, sometimes because I'm Asian and because of that other side,
right,
that sometimes people confuse. But,
yeah,
I've never felt unsafe or anything like that from, being in the spa or clients or anything.
Okay. And then just in your social life in general, is it easy to date, or do you find that people are generally ignorant? Or
Well, growing up, being raised by Italian family, we were always around a lot of bread and pastas and lots of food. Mm-hmm. So I gained a lot of weight.
Okay.
And that was a challenge for me, because then I didn't really feel confident or, feel attractive because of my weight. And so it really wasn't until after I started really taking care of my body and my mind and feeling healthier that then I became more confident and comfortable dating. But I think that, now I see that men do like Asian because it's exotic. And so it's nice to see that, because growing up, I didn't think that.
It was the opposite, kind of. Yeah.
It was the opposite.
Right.
Yeah. But dating is challenging regardless.
Regardless,
it's
yes. Then you have the whole other layers. Yeah. Yes. What are your general thoughts on adoption, in case, somebody's listening and they're interested in maybe adopting from overseas? What advice can you give them?
Well, I actually am part of a charity that I am a brand ambassador for. It's called Open Hearts for Orphans, mm-hmm. and I'm a motivational speaker for them. And what this charity does is they raise funds to be able to help foster parents or parents that want to adopt children receive funds for the adoption, as well as the resources to be able to start that process. And then what I do is I talk about what it's like to be adopted once they have a child, how to communicate with their child about it. So that's, a great resource, Open Hearts for Orphans.
How can people contact that charity?
Lisa Murphy actually is the one that's in charge of that. And, I could give you, her number and website. And
okay. We'll include that contact information in the description section below the podcast. So anybody that's interested can go there to get the information.
It is a good resource. Yeah. And I wanted to also say we raised money for medical supplies for babies overseas, because when I came over at 4 months old, I weighed 6 pounds. I had malnutrition. I had a fever of 103, and I was tube fed for 2 weeks. I was Strive to Thrive.
Wow.
So it's very near and dear to my heart to be able to get those medical supplies that are needed for babies as well overseas that are sick. Okay. So that's something that the charity also raises money for as well.
That is fantastic. What advice can you give to other people that have been adopted as you have been? Just to navigate life a little easier,
Well, I would say, because there's two parts to that. There's, communication from the parents, and then there's also like, how would I communicate to someone that's adopted? The type of conversations I would have for both. But for the parents, I think the most important thing is to tell the child early on, do not wait.
Okay.
And to be able to find support groups, for the child, that, to be with other kids that are adopted too, or other parents that also, have adopted kids. So this way, because it's a different type of context and conversation, that, you need to be very open with the child. So I think that's the most important thing too. And then also just to make sure that the child knows that they were chosen.
Right.
You know, and that
they're special.
You know, yes, and that the outside family, you know, loves the child just the same. You know what I mean? So that was always a blessing, because I do have siblings.
I was just about to ask if you have siblings.
Yeah.
So, and how was that? Like, what was that like? Are they they're older siblings, I assume, or younger? Are they older?
I have one older sister, Kim, and she's the natural child.
Okay.
So I say natural because she was given natural birth. And then I have two younger brothers that are also adopted from Vietnam.
Okay.
And they're 15 years younger.
Okay.
So, you know, having that family dynamic, and I think making sure that if you do have a child that is natural and also ones that are adopted, that the love is the same.
Okay.
You don't treat each other. There was no favoritism. Although I guess as kids, you know, you kind of joke around, and I used to say to my mom, "Oh, I'm the favorite," because I was the easy child. My sister was the rebellious child.
What's the age difference with the older sister?
6.5 years.
Wow. Okay.
Older.
Okay. And did you at any point feel "quote unquote" wrath from her, like you invaded her home or anything like that? Jealousy. Yes, sibling jealousy.
As we got older, I was jealous of her because she was a model.
Okay.
And really thin and beautiful and had the blonde hair, and, you know, a lot of my guy friends liked her and not me.
Okay.
And so that's where in my mind, I kept thinking, well, that must be beautiful. That's what the ideal, you know, type for guys is. So I used to be very jealous of her in that way. But then she used to be jealous of me in that, you know, and that I came in when my parents had more financial stability. So she didn't really have the same, you know, I guess, comforts that I did, you know, growing up. But we loved each other. But sibling rivalry, you know, we used to get in like little things like that.
As long as it's the regular sibling rivalry and not just because, you know, you were brought into the family.
Yeah.
So... Well, I am so happy you were able to share that with everyone. And I really appreciate the time, Mia. And as I said before, I'll include the name of your charity and the contact information in the description section below the podcast. And I wish you a wonderful rest of your day. This was really great to have you join me today.
Oh, thank you. And I'm hoping I could also just include, too, my book. I just came out with a book which is called Be a Success Maverick, How Ordinary People Achieve Extraordinary Results.
Wonderful.
And my adoption story is actually in that book.
Oh, great.
But also about how tragedy can lead to triumph.
Wonderful.
And that's really the theme for that. So,
and it's available on Amazon?
It is available on Amazon. I also do have a direct link too.
I'll include that in the description section of the podcast as well. It was wonderful talking to you. It's been a little while.
I know. It's been so great to talk to you too. Thank you so much for having me today.
Take care, Mia.
All right, you too, dear.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
If you haven't already done so, please like and subscribe to hear upcoming podcasts. And please share with family and friends. Thanks for listening.